All right, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Integrity Racing Show. I'm your host, Todd Thomas, and we're joined tonight by League Administrator and owner Jacob Fife, who will give us a recap of the races at Indianapolis Monday night with the Cup Series, and then just a few minutes ago, the Truck Series finished up their race at Michigan. But we have a special guest tonight, somebody that has dominated a few races here in the Integrity Racing League. NPAS driver, and definitely somebody everybody actually enjoys racing with is Matt Bussa. So, Matt, thanks for joining us tonight. Let's start off with kind of, how does somebody like yourself get into iRacing? How did that kind of take place? And let's start from there.
Yeah, I first got into iRacing, I think it was 2009 I joined, and that was after I racing 2003 season. Got really bored of that. Went over to R Factor first before iRacing, and then just needed something more competitive. So saw, I think it was Denny Hamlin running some laps in iRacing Simulator on Pocono after he originally, I think, did it on NR 2003. And I looked it up and got all excited. Went and registered right away, and that's how it all started.
All right, the question I always have is, you're obviously a pretty fast driver. You've made the NPAS, and you're always up front here in the Integrity Racing League. Was that always the case? Were you always up front, or was it something that built over time? Jacob likes to say that, and maybe he's bending the truth a little bit here, that he was able to run with you at first. Were you always fast out of the gate, or was it something that built over time?
No, it definitely built over time. I remember at first, my very first lap was the Mazda Lime Rock, and it took me forever to just make it past turn one. I would just keep going in the grass, thinking the car would have all the grip in the world, but it didn't. And then I started in the Cup car 2011. I waited 2 years for that, and I went into Go Pro in 2012. And then 2012 season 2, I was just all by myself, didn't know anybody. Didn't really have any reputation or anything like that. And I believe I missed making pro by 4 or 5 spots. And then season 3, I met Zach Hudson. You guys may know him. And me and him just worked on setups together. I had no idea what I was doing, but in the end, luckily made pro by, I think, only by 2 spots. And then ever since then, I got to know Nick Ottinger well. He's the leader of Gale Force Sim Racing. And he just saw potential in me and invited me on the team. And ever since then, things have been going pretty well.
All right, so besides the cat in the background, I don't know if you're maybe around your, the beautiful cat there, if we could get that on the screen. The cat is definitely a highlight of the show. So I don't know if you're maybe around your racing setup, if that's something. Yeah, there's the cat, everybody. If you're maybe around your racing setup, I know this is something a lot of people like to know. What do really fast drivers race on? Could you show the people what the setup there is in the Bussa household?
Yeah, it's fairly simple. I just got a desk here, as you can see. It's a corner desk, and my wheel is just hooked up to it. I got a G27 wheel, G27 pedals, right down there. I just recently got a gaming computer.
Nice.
I'm not even sure what it is, but I used to run on a laptop, my MacBook, for several years.
Now I'm depressed.
He's beating us on a laptop, guys.
Oh yeah. I have video evidence that I beat him once at USA in the Truck Series when we first started. It's on YouTube. Go look it up. Now I'm severely depressed. Thank you. I'll be over in a corner.
Yeah, the laptop I would get around like 20 to 30 frames per second, and I thought that was really good when I would hit like 30. And now on this new computer, I'm actually in a session right now. We got that mega 110 FPS. So ever since that, I think this year has definitely been my best in NPAS, and a lot of it I contribute to this computer. But yeah, it's a fairly simple setup. Just I believe it's like a 20-inch monitor, and do not have triples. That's something I want to get in the future. But that's pretty much all there is to it.
All right, so as you can tell there, I've got a pretty nice setup here with the triple monitors and a pretty nice racing computer, and I'm getting demolished by Bussa every week. So it's definitely not the equipment. It's definitely a lot of talent that goes into it. So let's talk about your career here in the Integrity Racing League. You've been a member for a few years now. What's that like? You know, I think it's my thought is that for you guys, it's maybe just a little bit more fun, relaxed. You know, just have some fun as compared to the mental stress that might go for an NPAS race. What's your mentality when you join an Integrity Racing League race on a Monday night?
Yeah, it's definitely changed over the years. Back in the fine line racing days with Jacob, it was just all about like going for the championship. It was something I really strived for. I would tell my parents on Saturday nights like, "Oh, we got to go home, got to get this race in," and yes, hello.
The categories.
And then yeah, but then once NPAS got pretty competitive in that, then I'd still say it's like I'm pretty competitive in integrity, and it's not just for fun, but I really use it now with the dynamic surface we got. That I search around for the lines to see which lines will work throughout the race, and it can apply really, really well to the NPAS race. So I use it for practice. So I definitely don't just. He's very talkative tonight.
Yeah, he is. What's up, Kitty? Well,
basically,
go ahead.
Yeah, basically just use it for practice for NPAS, but I still try to like win every race that I'm in, and I don't know, I'll always have that competitive part of me where if you're not like winning, then there's no point in it. Like I don't see a point in riding around or just like riding around in 5th, 10th.
Well, for some of us running around in 5th now, especially when you got yourself, you got Faye Ash is obviously defending champion. Zach Novak's been in the Cup Series. Now we got Christian Schauner. Definitely a strong contingent up at the front that's fun to race with, and for some of us, a little bit challenging, but I think that's what makes the Integrity Racing League a lot of fun. And then finally, I think a lot of times we only learn a little bit about the person, about the driver, and not about the person. So besides Integrity Racing League, you're a young guy. I think you're in college yourself. So kind of tell us what the day in the life of Matt Bussa is, and kind of what your plans are personally in your personal life.
Yeah, I actually just graduated from college in last May. So right now I'm working full time in the city in Chicago. So I leave my house around like 6:30 a.m. and I get home at about 6:30 p.m. It's a little into the city using the train and all that. So my free time either goes to like my family or friends, my girlfriend priority, and then the remaining time I have, I usually just spend testing NPAS. And because that always takes like hours and hours of time to get that set up perfect. And otherwise, I love traveling a lot. This Thursday, I'm actually leaving to go to the Grand Canyon, and I'll be there for a few days. And then hopefully in the future, I want to go to Iceland, maybe this winter, but I'm not quite sure yet. We got to see what the money is. And yeah, it's pretty much me in a nutshell.
Well, cool deal. So, again, thanks to Matt for joining us here for a few minutes and giving us an insight. Towards the end of the show, we're actually Matt's going to maybe talk us through a lap at Pocono, which is where the Cup Series will be next week as we go there for the second time on Monday night. But let's go ahead and transition to a recap of the week that was here in the Integrity Racing League. Last night, the Cup Series went to Indianapolis Motor Speedway for the Brickyard 200, and Zach Novak in his first race here in the Cup Series with the Integrity Racing League dominates, leading 67 of the 80 laps. and finishes up front and gets the victory in his first race. Brad Patton finishes second. David Radler, a good run there in third. Colton Landis, a strong run for Colton, and definitely a strong driver. Has had maybe a little bit of rough luck this season to finish fourth. Adam Blasio finishes fifth, gets I think maybe his fifth or sixth consecutive top five in a row. Tyler Hurst sixth. Guillermo Alvarez with a strong run in seventh. Eric de Blasio eighth. Kristen Schallner with a very disappointing ninth. And then Brandon Coppinger will finish there in 10th. Jacob, a good showing for the league. A newcomer to the league in to the series, I should say. Zach Novak in his first race gets his first win.
Yeah, it looks like he was able to run up front for most of the race. I think the cautions played out pretty well, where strategy wasn't a major factor, with the exception of Schallner. I think got caught out by one of the cautions right when pit stops were getting ready to happen, or a couple people had started to pit. I think a caution came out and kind of caught him to where, actually last caution probably, he had to start at the end of the lead lap basically and kind of work his way back through. So he really did a good job to get back up to ninth, I believe it was for him. Overall, the racing itself looked to be pretty decent. I was done relatively early last night. I was caught up in the first incident and ran in the back Jason Miller, which was unfortunate. And then I got Ricky Bobbied on the second caution when Staller in his Wonder Bread car went flying from the inside of the pit wall back on track, and I had nowhere to go. So that kind of ended things pretty early. But that happens from time to time, so no worries. But I did enjoy watching the battle for 20th between Papa Fife and Randy Thayash, because that's only as fast as I could go. So, but in all seriousness, though, looked like some pretty decent racing for the most part, which is a carryover from New Hampshire, where we had some good racing as well. So hopefully when we go to Pocono next week, we can continue the good runs and have a little bit better racing than we did when the first time we were at Pocono.
All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the chase standings after the race there to Indianapolis. Brad Patton maintains his points lead by virtue of his two victories, and you can see the five winners up front who have locked themselves in. Jay Heisman remains our top point getter amongst non-winners. Jacob Fife, Josh Campbell, Eric de Blasio, Cody Smith. I keep saying those on the left-hand side of the screen are probably setting themselves up well to make the chase. Anybody on the right-hand side, James Hudson's probably in good shape, 43 points to the clear. But then you got a group here of Alan Pajari, William Dunn, Brandon Coppinger, Caleb Eisenhower, who would be into the chase right now, and Nick Terbuck would be into the chase. And actually a tie for 16th, and Greg Trigo would lose the tiebreaker. So definitely, Bussa, we'll get your input here. One of the things that's going to factor into the chase later on this season about who makes the chase, and then obviously towards the end of the season when we get into the chase, is you three or four pro drivers up front that are always racing for the win. It's going to kind of upset the dynamic of the chase itself, as maybe those guys like myself that are in the chase maybe don't have as much of a chance to win. Your thoughts on that as we go forward?
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how much the pro drivers actually show up for those races, because we certainly don't want to impact who wins the championship or impact who advances to the next round in the chase and all that. So it might actually, I don't know if we have a rule if any of the pro drivers can run at Homestead, but I think I heard in last week's Cup race broadcast that they said the Cup drivers cannot race in the final round. So that might be a rule that we could use here. I know I personally will not race in that race, just to make sure that, anything can happen in that code. So I really don't want to impact who wins the championship.
Well, that's an awfully kind thing. I don't know, Jacob, if you want to interject yourself about if there's any rule here in the Integrity Racing League about pro drivers in the chase or at a Homestead.
No, I think what the broadcasters were referencing to last week was basically the fact that they can't race for the championship itself, as in winning the championship. There's no rule to speak of as far as races they cannot race, but I think with the pros that we do have, I think most of them will use good judgment in terms of either how they race or if they choose not to race, which, as Matt alluded to, which races not to get involved in to not really impact the championship, especially as we get closer to the end of the season.
All right, so that's that. Pro drivers can absolutely race in any race they want to race in. I actually enjoy it. I think it adds a new dynamic. Obviously, Talladega is a chase race, and that's something that anybody has a chance to win. And then, part of it is about racing the best. And if that just means you have to points race instead of trying to win every race, maybe so be it. But that's just my thoughts on it, and everybody has the right to their opinion, I guess. Let's go ahead and take a look as we haven't taken a look at the Rookie of the Year standings in a couple of weeks. Brad Patton maintains that lead, but that lead has shrunk down to 7 points over Nick Terbuck. Caleb Eisenhower is now down just 11 points in third place. Brandon Coppinger in 13 points back, and David Rattler rounds out your top 5, 19 points back. So the drop weeks are just about really to start to take a hold on this Rookie of the Year, and we might get a little tight little battle there, Jacob.
Yeah, I think it's really shaping up. You see, where first and third both have 14 starts still, so they'll have the opportunity to kind of catch up. I think, I believe Rattler was third. No, I'm sorry, Eisenhower. He took a provisional this past week, but I think he's had some really solid runs here and could close the gap on Patton for sure as we start to get towards the end of the season, as this is a season-long deal. And then Nick, who's running in second currently, he's just really consistent. I think sometimes when those guys have races where they'll either run really well or they'll wreck, he'll be able to capitalize and keep himself in the running for that Rookie of the Year award for this year.
All right, let's go ahead and transition to the All-In Truck Series here that just finished up their race tonight at Michigan. Matthew Wright gets his 4th victory of the year, leading a race-high 39 laps to finish up front. James Hudson, another strong run, finished 2nd. Cody Smith finishes 3rd. James Skelton, very good run for James to finish 4th. Adam Beneful finishes 4th. Brad Patton leads 30 laps, but maybe gets caught up and caught in a late race caution, as I understand it, and finishes 6th. Brandon 6th, 7th, Alan Pajari 8th, Daniel Holloway 9th, and another strong running for Randy Fash to keep himself in that championship hunt to finish 9th. And another race that unfortunately I was not able to take part in, so we're going to have to toss it to Jacob for the recap of the night there at Michigan.
Yeah, Michigan's always a lot of fun. I was caught up, once again, seems to be a theme, caught up in an accident early on in the race, but especially during the early part of the race, there was a lot of 3-wide racing, and you were able to pick different lanes to get runs and take advantage of other people who might be caught out or trying to pass somebody and maybe weren't successful at it, so you got to run to pass them type of deal. Definitely some good racing up at the front with a mix of pit strategy. I know early on in the race, Adam Benefield was able to lead a lot of laps along with Brad, and some pit strategy and things along those lines kind of changed the dynamic of the race and really put Matt up front. And it was a close battle towards the end. Him and Hudson, Hudson was closing in on him towards the end there. And I think with a few more laps would have made it an interesting race for sure, but just ran out of time. So definitely congratulations to Matt Wright on taking the win, his 4th of the season. And next week, there's only 2 races left for the regular season in the Truck Series. So we'll go to Bristol next week, and then the week after that, we'll finish off the regular season with Mosport or Canadian Tire or whatever it calls itself. So we'll be at those 2 tracks in the next 2 weeks, and then we'll have a week off, and then the chase for the Truck Series starts.
All right, and speaking of the chase for the Truck Series Championship, let's go ahead and look at the All-In Truck Series chase grid. Matthew Wright has 4 wins, and so he's the most wins in the league currently. James Hudson, Guillermo Alvarez, Jacob Fife, Lance Gentles, Brandon Six, and Greg Trigo have all won a race and locked themselves into the Truck Series playoffs, so congratulations to those guys. 3 spots are up for grabs currently with points as we head to, with just 2 races remaining. That means at least one of these spots will be given to a points getter, and it looks like Randy Fayesh has set himself up well to at least guarantee himself of that points position. So Randy Fayesh is in pretty good shape there. Cody Smith and Josh Buckley are the last two in, with Brian Terry, Daniel Holloway, Maxime Theriault, and Alan Roll on the outside looking in. Jacob, break down the point standings here for us, and maybe who are some of the favorites as we go towards the chase.
Yeah, with a couple people not showing up tonight, like Alan, for instance, and then Joe Slamma didn't show up tonight. It really kind of clears up the picture. Allen, with a decent points night, would have been right there with Holloway and having a shot to catch up to Buckley, but he did not show up. And then Joe, with the win, which he's more than capable of, if he raced the remaining regular season races, he would have been eligible for the chase. So with not showing up tonight, he wouldn't, based on starts, he wouldn't be eligible anymore. So really it's a matter of, can Buckley hold on and stay ahead of Holloway, and I believe it was Theriault behind him there. It might be a two-horse race at this point between Holloway and Buckley, but you never know what will happen. I think with Bristol, a lot can happen depending on how many people show up, and then with Mosport, it's a toss-up. So we'll see how those 2 weeks go, and it'll shake out pretty quickly, and we'll know for sure here in the next 2 weeks who's going to be able to move on and have a chance at the championship.
All right, so let's go ahead and look to the week ahead in the Integrity Racing League as the Cup Series goes for the second trip in 7 weeks at Pocono. Matt, you're somebody that has dominated Integrity Racing League races at Pocono in the past. It will be a late afternoon race, to go ahead and clarify that for Jacob, since I forgot to ask him about that earlier. It's going to be a late afternoon race at Pocono. I'm not exactly sure what NIS is actually doing, but it will be a late afternoon race for the Integrity Racing League. So Matt is somebody that's run a lot up front in the Integrity Racing League at Pocono. Kind of break down the track for us, and what are some keys for you to get around that track as quickly as possible?
Yeah, going into turn one, I typically break at the 2 marker, I believe it is, whatever the second to last. I guess my cat breaks at the marker. But I break at the 2 marker.
The cat says you need to drive it in deeper. he wants out. Yeah, I think he does too.
And I know in afternoon it was optional to shift. In turns one, you can either go out in 3rd gear or stay in 4th. And I think in late afternoon, you're probably going to want to stay in 4th gear. I'll have to see it when I test it out, but I'd recommend staying in 4th gear in late afternoon because you'll be carrying more speed through the center of the corner. And on entry, I typically stay about 1.5 lanes to 2 lanes off the bottom. And then I want to get towards the bottom on exit to get that nice runoff head into the tunnel turn, it's called, I believe, yeah. And the tunnel turn is a really fast turn, but at the same time, you need to use a lot of brake to get the car pointed on exit. And I believe in late afternoon, it'll be a fairly simple turn compared to turn 1 and 3. Probably the easiest of the 3. And in turn 3, not turns, I believe I'm going to say the low line will still be best. You could go low or high with the multi-groove, but it depends how many cars we get. If we do not get over like 35 or say, we'll probably want to stay low. And then there is a bump on the exit of turn 3 that you got to be careful for. You can get full throttle right before the bump. And then I always just lift to like 75% throttle as I go over the bump, just to let the car settle. Second I'm over that bump, I smash it off again. So that should be a decent map on Pocono, verbally.
All right, so thanks for the breakdown there, Matt. And the All-In Truck Series goes to the High Bank Coliseum of Dover Bristol Speedway.
The other
Bristol,
concrete track.
the other concrete track.
Yeah.
There at Bristol. Jacob, break down what we maybe can expect at Bristol. I might have to make my way over there for the Truck Series on Tuesday night.
Yeah, it should be a fun race. I know we'll have a decent group show up for that. It's just like any other race at Bristol. hugging against the wall and trying to battle for either maintaining position or creating, either making somebody else make a mistake or creating your own opportunity to kind of dive down and get that position and hopefully get back up again before the hole closes. So it should be an interesting race for sure. I think you'll have some drivers who might be a little bit more antsy as they come closer to trying to make it for the cut line.
Sorry. The cat is killing me. I'm sorry, Jacob.
No, you're fine. It's taking over the show. But yeah, it's Bristol, baby. So even the cat will probably end up racing and getting a few points by the end of the night.
All right, I think we all agree that the Bussa cat will definitely have to make a return appearance here to the Integrity Racing League show. So, thanks for joining us.
We should have him and Alan together on a show. See how that works.
Let's not put the cat through that torture. All right, so thanks for joining us here for the Integrity Racing League as we recap the week that was and look forward to the week that will be. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back again next Tuesday night after that Truck Series race at Bristol, and we'll break down another week's action. So thanks to our guest, Matt Bussa, for joining us, and we wish everybody a successful night. Have a good night, everybody.